Ace Johnson was 38 years old, earned $66,000 a year as a surgical tech at Mission Hospital, and at 3:02 p.m. on a Sunday afternoon, he learned his marriage was a lie. He was a man whose life was built on precision, on the quiet, sterile ballet of the operating room, where a steady hand and an anticipated need could mean the difference between a clean closure and a catastrophic bleed. His world was one of stainless steel, of the quiet beep of monitors, of knowing the exact weight and feel of a DeBakey forceps versus a mosquito clamp in his palm. His income was steady. His life in his 900-square-foot West Asheville bungalow was modest, and his pride was rooted in the tangible reality of his work. He helped save lives, and that was enough, or it had been enough. For his wife, Talia, it was increasingly, painfully clear that it was not. He saw it in the way her eyes would glaze over when he talked about a complex 12-hour spinal fusion, her attention snagged by a notification on her $1,200 iPhone 14 Pro. He felt it in the way she'd hold up a magazine featuring a $2.4 million home in Biltmore Forest and say, "Can you imagine, Ace?" With a sigh that felt less like a dream and more like an indictment. She was a beautiful black woman, her skin luminous, her locks always perfectly coiled and maintained at a salon that charged $300 a session. But her beauty had begun to feel like a decoration in a house he no longer recognized as his own. The source of the recent heightened tension was a sum of money so large it felt unreal to him. $340,000. It was the after-tax payout from a year-long consulting project with a medical device company, a side gig that had consumed his evenings and weekends. He'd helped them refine the ergonomics of a new set of laparoscopic instruments, his real-world, hands-on knowledge proving invaluable. The money had been deposited 3 weeks ago into a separate brokerage account he'd opened just for this purpose, an account Talia did not know the exact balance of. He had been planning to surprise her, to finally give her a piece of the life she seemed to crave. A down payment on a bigger house, a trip to Europe, something that would finally make her look at him with the uncomplicated admiration he remembered from their first years together. He had no idea how wrong he was. The devastating truth came to him not in a dramatic confrontation, but in a quiet moment, carried on the warm afternoon air into the one place that was entirely his, the garage workshop. Have you ever had a moment where the world shifts on its axis, where everything you thought was solid ground turns to sand? It's a terrifying feeling, but sometimes it's the only thing that can show you the truth. Let us know in the comments if you've ever faced a betrayal that changed everything. And stick with us to see how Ace, a man of quiet dignity, navigated the storm he never saw coming. The facade of their life was built of small, accumulated details, each one tagged with a price he could afford and a price she disdained. Their mornings began with the gurgle of an $80 Mr. Coffee machine, filling 2 simple ceramic mugs he'd bought at a local craft fair for $15 each. Ace would drink his black, enjoying the quiet ritual before heading into the controlled chaos of the hospital. Talia would add 2 sugars and a splash of oat milk, her attention already captured by the glowing screen of her phone, scrolling through images of lives that cost millions. "Look at this," she'd murmur, showing him a picture of a woman in a $5,000 Gucci handbag stepping out of a $120,000 Range Rover. "That's the life." Her tone was wistful, a soft, daily erosion of his own contentment. Their home, the bungalow he'd bought before they were married, was a constant source of friction. He loved its sturdy 1940s construction, the small garden he'd cultivated in the backyard, the way the afternoon light hit the original hardwood floors. To him, the $280,000 mortgage was a symbol of his hard work and independence. To Talia, it was a cramped, outdated box in the wrong part of town. "My mother's guest bathroom is bigger than our living room," she'd once said, not with overt cruelty, but with the casual, thoughtless dismissal that stung far worse. Her mother, Roberta, lived in a sprawling $3.2 million contemporary home on Biltmore Lake, a world of glass walls, caterers, and silent electric boats gliding across the water. Visiting was an exercise in quiet humiliation for Ace. Roberta, a formidable black woman whose own deep brown skin seemed to radiate wealth, would look at his scuffed $120 Cole Haan shoes and offer him a drink from a bottle of scotch that cost more than his monthly car payment on his 2018 Honda CR-V. The contrast was everywhere. Ace found satisfaction in fixing things himself. When the kitchen faucet started to drip, he spent a Saturday afternoon under the sink with a $15 wrench set and a $5 washer, the feeling of solving a tangible problem filling him with a quiet pride. Talia had watched him from the doorway, a frown on her face. "Why don't you just call a plumber? Mother has a guy who comes in 30 minutes. It's only, $200? She didn't understand the value of self-reliance, only the convenience of a well-padded bank account. Dinners were a minefield of unspoken comparisons. Ace would cook, finding a meditative rhythm in chopping vegetables for a stir-fry or simmering a sauce. He'd open a $12 bottle of Malbec he'd picked up at Trader Joe's, and Talia would sip it with a polite, thin smile. "It's nice," she'd say, before launching into a story about a recent dinner at her mother's. "Mama opened a French Bordeaux last night, a 2005 vintage. It was probably a $1,000 bottle. You could just taste the difference, the complexity." He knew. He tasted it in every word she said. The complexity was that he was not enough. His life was the cheap wine, and she longed for the vintage. He remembered the day he'd signed the consulting contract. He'd been so excited, so proud. He told her about the opportunity, that it could be a significant payday. Her eyes had lit up in a way he hadn't seen in years. "Oh, Ace, that's wonderful," she'd exclaimed, her hug feeling more possessive than affectionate. "We can finally start living. We need to combine all our accounts, be a real team. What's yours is mine, right?" He'd agreed in principle, but something held him back. A quiet instinct. He'd opened a new, separate account for the consulting payments, telling himself it was just for accounting purposes to keep things clean. He'd told her the payments were coming in small increments, not the lump sum it actually was. He hadn't known why he'd done it, not consciously. It was a small act of self-preservation, a financial wall built around a part of himself he wasn't yet ready to cede. Now that wall felt like the only solid thing he had left. The domestic normalcy they performed day after day was just a stage play, and he was the only actor who didn't know the script. The props, the cheap coffee maker, the expensive phone, the modest car, the sprawling lakeside mansion, were all just clues he had failed to read. Sunday, September 18th. The time was 2:57 p.m. The air in Ace's garage workshop was thick with the scent of freshly cut oak and the faint metallic smell of linseed oil. It was his sanctuary, a small detached structure filled with tools that felt like extensions of his own hands. A $450 DeWalt table saw stood silent in one corner, a testament to a big purchase he'd saved for over a year. On his workbench, amidst wood shavings and neatly organized chisels, lay a half-restored rocking chair, a $50 find from a flea market on the outskirts of town. He was carefully planing a new rocker, the rhythmic shh of the antique Stanley hand plane, a form of meditation. The sun streamed through the single dusty window, illuminating the motes of sawdust dancing in the air. This was his peace. The back door of the bungalow opened and closed with a familiar click. He heard the faint sound of Talia's voice from the patio, a flagstone area just 20 feet from the open bay door of his workshop. He paid it no mind. She was likely on the phone with her mother, a daily ritual of complaints and gossip that he had long ago learned to tune out. He focused on the grain of the wood under his hand, the precise angle of the blade, the satisfying curl of the shaving as it peeled away. But then, a phrase cut through the afternoon haze, sharp and cold. "Don't worry, Mama, he's completely clueless." Ace's hand stopped mid-stroke. The plane froze on the wood. He held his breath, every muscle in his body tensing. The world narrowed to the sound of his wife's voice, suddenly stripped of its usual melodic warmth, now brittle and sharp as glass. "No, he hasn't moved it yet," Talia said, her voice a low, conspiratorial hum. "The final bonus payment cleared, the full $340. It's just sitting in that stupid brokerage account he set up. He thinks he's being so clever, keeping it separate to surprise me." She laughed, a sound utterly devoid of humor. It was a cold, metallic little noise, like coins dropping on a marble floor. "The surprise will be on him." Ace felt a wave of nausea. He slowly, silently, set the handplane down on the workbench. His hands, the same hands that were rock steady in the most critical moments of surgery, were trembling. He crept to the edge of the open garage door, staying in the shadows, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. "The lawyer said the timing is perfect," Talia continued, her voice gaining a cruel confidence. "We file on Friday. We'll file an emergency motion to freeze all assets. Because it was earned during the marriage, my lawyer says we have a strong claim to at least half, but he thinks we can argue for all of it. We'll say it was intended for the marital estate, for a new house. We'll drain his 401k too. He has about 180 in there. We'll take it all." A pause. Ace could picture her perfectly, leaning against the patio railing, swirling a glass of iced tea, the picture of suburban tranquility while she plotted the demolition of his life. "I'll take everything, Mama," she said, and the words landed like stones in the pit of his stomach. Every last cent. He won't see it coming. He'll be left with that pathetic little house and his $60,000 a year job. By the time he figures out what happened, it will be too late. He'll be ruined. The silence that followed was more damning than the words. It was filled with the unspoken agreement of two people completely aligned in their malice. He heard the faint murmur of Roberta's voice on the other end, a sound of encouragement, of approval. "I know, Mama, he deserves it," Talia said, her voice soft now, almost gentle, which was somehow the most monstrous part of all. "He was never good enough for me anyway. You were right all along." Ace backed away from the doorway, stumbling over a stray piece of lumber. He sank onto a low stool, the rough wood pressing into his back. The air in the workshop suddenly felt thin, unbreathable. The smell of sawdust was suffocating. He looked at his hands, at the calluses on his palms from his tools and his work. He thought of the years he had spent loving this woman, supporting her, believing they were a team. It had all been a performance. He was not her partner, he was her mark. The precision he prided himself on, the ability to see what was needed before anyone asked, it was a joke. He had been living with a stranger, a predator, and he had never seen it. The warmth of the afternoon was gone, replaced by an Arctic chill that settled deep in his bones. At 3:07 p.m., Ace Johnson's world had ended, and a new one, cold and clear and brutally simple, had just begun. The cruelty, he now realized, had been accumulating for years, a debt of 1,000 small cuts he had foolishly mistaken for love's occasional friction. With the sound of Talia's voice still echoing in his mind, his memory became a curated gallery of betrayals, each one now illuminated in the harsh, unflattering light of the truth. He remembered a dinner at Roberta's Biltmore Lake estate about a year ago. It was for her 60th birthday, a lavish affair with a private chef, and a string quartet playing softly on the veranda overlooking the water. Ace had worn his best suit, a charcoal gray wool number that had cost him $700 from a local men's store. He'd felt presentable, confident even. He'd given Roberta a first-edition copy of a Zora Neale Hurston novel he'd found at a rare bookshop for $450, thinking the thoughtful gift would be appreciated. Roberta had accepted it with a thin smile, placing it on a side table without a second glance. Later, he'd overheard her speaking to one of her friends, a woman dripping in what was easily $100,000 worth of diamonds. "Talia's husband," Roberta had said, her voice dripping with condescension. "He tries so hard. It's almost sweet, isn't it?" The friend had laughed, a tinkling, dismissive sound. At the time, Ace had felt a hot flash of shame, but he'd brushed it off as Roberta's well-known snobbery. Now he understood it as a statement of intent. He was a temporary amusement, a stepping stone, to be discarded. Then there was the conversation about finances just 2 months ago, right after he'd told Talia the consulting project was wrapping up, and the final payment would be substantial. They were in the living room, the television playing some reality show Talia loved, where women with impossibly smooth faces screamed at each other on yachts. "Honey," she'd said, turning to him during a commercial break, her expression a perfect mask of sincerity. "Now that this big bonus is coming, we really need to get serious. We should combine everything, 100%. Your paycheck, my small income from the gallery, the bonus money. It all goes into one pot. That's what a real partnership is." He remembered feeling a flicker of unease. His 401k, the account he'd been diligently contributing to for 15 years, felt deeply personal, a testament to his own discipline. "We have a joint account for bills," he'd countered gently, "and my 401k is for our retirement, for both of us." Talia's face had tightened almost imperceptibly. "Don't you trust me, Ace?" she'd asked, her voice dangerously soft. It was a checkmate move, a question designed to make any hesitation feel like an accusation. "Of course I do," he'd said, the lie tasting like ash in his mouth. He'd promised to look into it, a promise he now knew she had interpreted as a guarantee. The betrayals weren't just financial, they were emotional, aimed at the core of who he was. He was a black man from a working-class family in Charlotte, his father a mechanic, his mother a schoolteacher. He was proud of his roots, of the values of hard work and integrity they'd instilled in him. Talia and Roberta saw his background as a liability, a stain to be bleached out. He'd once invited his sister, Naomi, to dinner with Talia and her mother. Naomi was an accountant, sharp, funny, and deeply unimpressed by wealth. She wore her natural hair in a glorious puff, and her laughter was loud and genuine. Roberta had treated her with a frigid, barely there politeness. After Naomi left, Talia had turned to him. "She's a bit much, isn't she? So loud. And her hair? Does she have to be so aggressive with it?" Ace had been stunned into silence. He'd defended his sister, but weakly, caught off guard by the venom. "That's just who she is," he'd stammered. "I love who she is." Talia had just shrugged, a silent, damning judgment. She wasn't just rejecting his family, she was rejecting the part of him that was like them. The Monday after he overheard the call was a masterclass in her duplicity. He woke up before her, the space in their $1,800 queen-sized bed feeling like a vast, empty tundra. He went through his morning routine on autopilot, the familiar actions feeling strange and foreign. At 7:15 a.m., she came into the kitchen, a bright, false smile on her face. She was holding a $45 Ember mug, a gift from her mother that he detested. "Morning, sleepyhead," she chirped, handing him the coffee. "I was just thinking about your bonus. Did all the final paperwork go through? I'm so proud of you. We should celebrate this weekend. Maybe that new restaurant downtown, the one with the $1,000 tasting menu." It was a test, a probe to see if the money was still where she thought it was. The outrage was a physical thing, a hot pressure behind his eyes. He forced a calm he did not feel. "Yeah, it's all set," he said, taking a sip of the coffee. "The tasting menu sounds great. Let's do it." He felt like an actor in a spy thriller, every word a carefully chosen move in a game he had just learned he was playing. The woman before him was not his wife. She was his enemy, and she was smiling right in his face. The week that followed was the longest of Ace's life. He moved through his days like a ghost, haunting the edges of the life he once thought was his. The core of his strategy was simple, born of the same discipline he applied in the operating room. Do nothing to alarm the patient. He had to maintain the facade of the clueless, devoted husband until every piece of his plan was in place. Every interaction with Talia was a scene. Every word, a carefully constructed lie. On Sunday evening, just hours after he'd learned of her plot, he cooked dinner. He made spaghetti with a simple tomato sauce, a comfort meal they'd shared dozens of times. He opened a bottle of wine, the same $12 Malbec she usually tolerated. He sat across from her at their small $300 dining table from IKEA and watched her. He watched the way her thumbs flew across her phone screen under the table, no doubt texting her mother. He watched the practiced smile she gave him when she looked up. "This is nice, honey," she said, twirling pasta onto her fork. "You know, I was looking at flights to Paris today. First class is about $7,000 each, but it would be worth it. We could stay at the George Feff. Mother says it's the only place to stay." She was spending his money in her head, decorating a future built on the ruins of his own. "Sounds amazing," Ace replied, his voice even. "We should definitely look into it after the bonus is settled in our new account." He saw a flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. The lie had landed perfectly. He felt nothing. The space where his love for her used to be was now a hollowed-out cavern, cold and silent. Monday morning, he went to work at Mission Hospital. The familiar scent of antiseptic, the squeak of his shoes on the linoleum, the calm, professional demeanor of his colleagues. It was all a profound relief. The operating room was a place of brutal honesty. An artery was either clamped or it wasn't. A patient was stable or they were not. There were no hidden motives, no secret plots. There was only the problem, and the skilled hands working to solve it. During a complicated knee replacement, he stood for 4 hours, his focus absolute, handing the surgeon the correct instrument before she even had to ask. In that sterile, focused environment, he felt more himself than he had in years. He was competent. He was necessary. He was not the fool his wife took him for. Wednesday was the day she escalated. He came home from a long shift at 7 p.m., his body aching with a fatigue that was more emotional than physical. Talia was waiting for him in the living room, a stack of papers on the coffee table. She was wearing a $400 silk blouse and a predatory smile. "Hi, sweetie," she said, her voice like honey laced with poison. "Just a few things came in the mail for us to sign, some updates to our life insurance policies. Just boring adult stuff." She pushed the papers toward him, along with an expensive-looking pen. Ace picked them up, his heart rate steady. He feigned a cursory glance, but his eyes scanned the letterhead. It was from the law firm of Wallace, Finch, and Gable, Roberta's notoriously aggressive attorneys. He recognized the name instantly. These weren't insurance papers. They were likely documents giving her power of attorney, or consent forms to access his financial records. It was a trap. Designed to be signed without reading. He had to think fast. He let out a long, theatrical yawn. "Talia, I'm exhausted," he said, rubbing his eyes. "I can barely see straight. Let me get to these in the morning when my head is clear. I don't want to sign something important when I'm this tired." He placed the papers neatly back on the table, next to a stack of mail. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. He saw the flicker of annoyance, quickly suppressed. "Of course, honey." "Whenever you're ready," she said, her voice a little too bright. "Just don't forget." He nodded, playing the part of the tired, pliable husband. "I won't," he promised. It was another lie, another brick in the wall he was building between his old life and the future he was about to seize. He was not just playing dumb, he was weaponizing her underestimation of him, and it was working perfectly. While Ace performed his role as the oblivious husband, he moved with silent, swift precision behind the scenes. The cold, clear anger that had replaced his grief was a powerful fuel. It demanded action, not despair. His first call was on his lunch break on Monday. He sat in his 2018 Honda CR-V in the hospital parking garage, the concrete walls amplifying the frantic beating of his heart. He dialed his sister, Naomi. She was an accountant in Charlotte, a woman whose mind worked like a steel trap, and the one person in the world he trusted without reservation. When she answered, her warm, familiar voice was almost enough to make him break. "Ace? What's up? You never call me in the middle of the day." He took a deep breath. "Naomi, I'm in trouble," he said, and then the whole sordid story spilled out of him in a hushed, urgent torrent. The phone call, the bonus, the 401k, the plan to ruin him. He expected shock, maybe sympathy. What he got was pure, unadulterated rage on his behalf. "That conniving, gold-digging," she began, her voice a low growl. "Okay, stop. Don't talk to her. Don't sign anything. Don't act any different. I'm going to get you a name, a lawyer, the best." The call ended with Naomi's promise. "We're going to fix this, Ace. You hear me? She picked the wrong family to mess with." For the first time in 24 hours, he felt a sliver of hope. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, he had an email from Naomi with a name and number. Anya Sharma, Esquire. A partner at a boutique firm in downtown Asheville specializing in high-asset divorce and financial forensics. "She's a shark, Ace," Naomi had written. "A black woman who eats men like Roberta's lawyers for breakfast. Go see her." Tuesday morning, Ace called in sick to work, a rare occurrence for him. At 9 a.m., he was sitting in Ms. Sharma's office on Wall Street. The space was modern and minimalist, with a large window overlooking the city. Anya Sharma was a woman who commanded respect without saying a word. She was tall and elegant, her hair in intricate braids, her suit a sharply tailored navy that probably cost $3,000. Her deep brown skin was luminous against the crisp white of her blouse. She listened to his story without interruption, her expression unreadable. Ace had brought everything. A copy of his prenuptial agreement, the bank statement showing the $340,000 bonus deposit into his sole and separate account, and the insurance papers Talia had given him. When he finished, Ms. Sharma finally spoke, her voice calm and measured. "First, you did everything right by not confronting her and not signing these," she said, tapping the documents from Roberta's lawyers. "These are a blatant attempt at fraudulent conveyance." She reviewed the prenup, her eyes scanning the pages with practiced speed. "This is excellent," she declared, "ironclad. It specifically designates income from separate professional endeavors as separate property. Your bonus is safe. The 401k is more complicated, as contributions during the marriage are generally considered marital property, but we can fight to protect the principal you had before the wedding." She leaned forward, her focus absolute. Her fee was $650 per hour. "Here is what we are going to do," she said. "We are going to move the $340,000 immediately, first to my firm's IOLTA trust account, and from there into an irrevocable trust. Do you have someone you trust implicitly to be the beneficiary?" "My sister," Ace said without hesitation. "Perfect," Ms. Sharma smiled. A brief, sharp flash of white. An irrevocable trust will place the funds legally outside of your control, and therefore beyond the reach of any court order she could possibly obtain. It will be as if the money no longer exists as your asset. We will prepare the divorce filing. We will serve her on Friday morning at her mother's house. We will strike first, and we will strike with overwhelming force. Ace felt a profound sense of relief wash over him. He was no longer a victim hiding in his garage. He was a client, a strategist. He wrote Ms. Sharma a check for a $10,000 retainer from his personal savings account, the one Talia didn't monitor closely. As he left her office, the Asheville sky seemed brighter. The plan was in motion. The trap was set. And for the first time all week, he felt the steady, familiar calm of a professional with a clear and precise task ahead of him. Friday morning arrived with a cool, crisp clarity that felt like a promise. The sky over the Blue Ridge Mountains was a pale, cloudless blue. For Ace, it was the day of the strike, the culmination of 5 days of cold tension and meticulous planning. He moved with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years, a surgeon's focus applied to the excision of a malignancy from his own life. At exactly 7:30 a.m., he walked into his local bank branch on Haywood Road. It was a small, quiet place, the air smelling of sanitized currency and stale coffee. He sat down with the branch manager, a kind-faced woman named Brenda, who had helped him secure the mortgage for his bungalow years ago. He explained that he needed to wire the full balance of his brokerage account to his attorney's trust account. The amount was $340,112.78. Brenda's eyes widened slightly at the number, but she simply nodded and began to type. Ace watched the numbers on her screen, feeling a strange detachment. This was a life-changing sum of money, the fruit of a year of exhausting work, and he was giving it away. But it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like a liberation. He signed the authorization form, his signature firm and clear. The transfer was instantaneous. A few clicks of a keyboard, and the money was gone, moving through the invisible arteries of the financial system to a place of safety. At 9 a.m., he was back in Anya Sharma's office. The irrevocable trust documents were laid out on the polished mahogany table, a thick stack of paper that represented his entire financial future. Ms. Sharma walked him through the key provisions, her explanations clear and concise. He, Ace Johnson, was the grantor. His sister, Naomi Johnson, was the sole, unchangeable beneficiary. The funds were to be managed by a trustee for her benefit. Once he signed, he would have no legal right to the money, ever again. It was a fortress. "Are you ready?" Ms. Sharma asked, her gaze steady. "I'm ready," Ace said. He picked up the heavy black fountain pen she offered. The only sound in the room was the scratch of the nib on the thick cotton paper as he signed his name, over and over. With the final signature, a weight lifted from his shoulders. He had done it. The money was safe. At 10:15 a.m., his phone buzzed. It was a text from Ms. Sharma. Service complete. She was served at the residence at 1 Biltmore Lake Drive. The process server reported she accepted the documents with a confused expression. The counterattack began 15 minutes later. The first voicemail landed at 10:30 a.m. Ace was driving, heading not home, but toward the mountains. He let it go to voicemail, his hand steady on the wheel of his CRV. He listened to it later, parked at an overlook with a panoramic view of the autumn foliage. Voicemail 1, 10:30 a.m. Talia's voice was tight with confusion. "Ace, what is this? I just got some papers. Some kind of joke? A man just came to Mother's door. Call me. This isn't funny." He didn't call. He just breathed in the clean mountain air. Voicemail 2, 11 a.m. Anger was creeping in now, sharp and jagged. "I'm at Mother's. You had me served? At my mother's house? In front of her friends? What is wrong with you? Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? Call me back, right now. He imagined the scene. The pristine, silent rooms of Roberta's glass house, the quiet shock, the facade of their perfect lives cracking. He felt a grim satisfaction. Voicemail 3, 11:45 a.m. This one was from Roberta. Her voice was pure ice, the carefully modulated tone of a woman used to absolute control, and who was furious to have lost it. You have made a grave mistake, young man. A very, very foolish mistake. You clearly do not understand who you are dealing with. Our lawyer will be in touch. You will regret this for the rest of your miserable little life. The threat was empty. He knew it. They had no ammunition. Voicemail 4, 1:00 p.m. The panic had set in. Talia's voice was high-pitched, strained. Ace, my lawyer, Mother's lawyer. He can't find the bonus account. He looked it up. The account is empty. The money... Where is the money? What did you do? Ace, this isn't a game. What did you do with our money? Our money. The audacity was breathtaking. Voicemail 5, 2:30 p.m. The pleading stage. Her voice was thick with fake tears. Okay, we can talk about this. I was just stressed. Mother gets in my head. You know how she is. I didn't mean any of it. Please just call me back. We can fix this. I love you, Ace. Please. The lie was so bald, so pathetic. It was almost laughable. Voicemail 6, 4:00 p.m. The final stage? Pure, unfiltered rage and despair. A shrieking, sobbing tirade. You've ruined everything, everything. It was supposed to be mine. I hate you. I hate you. You will get nothing. Do you hear me? Nothing. Ace deleted the message. He turned off his phone. The sun was beginning to dip toward the horizon, painting the valleys in shades of orange and purple. The strike was over. The silence that followed was the sound of his victory. The collapse of Talia and Roberta's world was not a loud explosion, but a quiet, systematic dismantling. It was a cascade of consequences, each one a direct result of their own greed and arrogance, enumerated in the sterile language of legal filings and bank statements. Anya Sharma was mercilessly efficient. The first domino to fall was their legal strategy. Roberta's high-powered attorney, a man who billed at $200 per hour, had built his entire case around seizing Ace's $340,000 bonus. When Ms. Sharma's office provided documentation of the irrevocable trust, established legally and properly before the divorce was filed, their case evaporated. The money was gone, untouchable. The expensive lawyer was left with nothing to attack. He'd already billed Roberta over $50,000 in retainers and fees for a fight that was over before it began. It was a complete and total loss. The second consequence was the divorce settlement itself. Without the bonus to fight over, the proceedings were swift and brutal. The prenuptial agreement was upheld without contest. The only marital assets were the bungalow and a small joint savings account. The bungalow had approximately $90,000 in equity. The savings account held $15,000. Talia was legally entitled to half of each. She walked away from a 5-year marriage with a check for $52,500. It was a fraction of what she had planned to steal, a pathetic sum compared to the life she felt she was owed. The third consequence was financial ruin for Talia. The life of casual luxury she'd lived was funded by a combination of Ace's steady income and her mother's largesse. With Ace gone, she was left with only her meager part-time salary from the art gallery. She couldn't afford the $950 monthly payment on her white $58,000 Mercedes C-Class. Within 2 months, the car was repossessed. Her credit score, which had been pristine, plummeted. The designer clothes, the $300 hair appointments, the expensive dinners, all of it came to a screeching halt. Humiliated and broke, she had no choice but to sell her half of the bungalow's equity to Ace. He secured a small loan and paid her the $45,000, the deed now solely in his name. Talia, at 36 years old, was forced to move back into her childhood bedroom in her mother's Biltmore Lake mansion. She was no longer a partner in a grand scheme, she was just her mother's disappointed daughter, a guest in her own life. The final, and perhaps most satisfying consequence was delivered by Ms. Sharma. Citing the insurance papers as evidence of a premeditated and fraudulent attempt to seize assets, she filed a motion to have Talia and Roberta declared responsible for Ace's legal fees. The judge, a no-nonsense woman who had seen her share of greedy litigants, agreed. They were ordered to pay Ace's entire legal bill, which came to a total of $22,500. The check arrived at Ms. Sharma's office by courier, drawn from Roberta's personal account. The memo line was blank. For Roberta, the humiliation was social. The story of her daughter's failed plot, of being outmaneuvered by a surgical tech, spread like wildfire through the gossipy, moneyed enclave of Biltmore Lake. She had tried to destroy a man she deemed beneath her, and instead, she had only exposed her own family's avarice. She had lost money, but more importantly, she had lost face, a currency she valued above all others. Ace, meanwhile, was free. He owned his home outright. His 401k, minus the small portion of marital contributions, was secure. His savings were intact. He had lost a wife, but he had gained himself. The consequences for them were not his doing. They were simply the bill for their own choices, finally come due. 2 years passed. The quiet rhythm of Ace's life returned, but it was a new rhythm, one of his own making. The West Asheville bungalow, once a stage for a toxic drama, was now his sanctuary. The garden in the back, which he had always tended, now flourished with an almost defiant vibrancy. Rows of tomatoes, kale, and peppers grew strong and healthy under the Carolina sun. He'd built a small wooden deck himself, using skills honed in his workshop, and it was where he drank his morning coffee from his favorite $15 ceramic mug, the silence broken only by the sound of birds. He was still a surgical tech at Mission Hospital. He hadn't sought a different job or a grand new life. He found deep, abiding satisfaction in his work, in its purpose and precision. He was respected by the surgeons he worked with, valued for his preternatural ability to anticipate their needs. His $66,000 salary was more than enough. He lived simply, his expenses low, his peace of mind high. He was a man content with the life he had built with his own 2 hands. The $340,000 safely managed by his sister Naomi in the irrevocable trust became a force for good. It was never his intention to use it for himself. The money was tainted by the greed that had sought to claim it. After long conversations with Naomi, he had her establish the Ace Johnson Surgical Excellence Scholarship. It was a fund dedicated to helping promising, financially disadvantaged students at Asheville Buncombe Technical Community College, the same school where he had earned his own certification years ago. Each year, the trust provided 2 full scholarships, a grant of $10,000 per student, enough to cover tuition, books, and living expenses. He met the first 2 recipients at a small ceremony at the college. They were young, bright-eyed, and full of a nervous energy he remembered well. One was a young black woman who had been working 2 jobs to support her family while taking classes at night. The other was a young man who was the first in his family to pursue any form of higher education. They shook his hand, their gratitude so profound and genuine it brought a lump to his throat. He saw himself in them, his own ambition, his own hope. A local photographer took a picture. Ace, standing between the 2 students, all 3 of them, smiling. In the photo, Ace's deep brown skin seemed to glow with a quiet pride. This, he realized, was true wealth. It wasn't a number in a bank account. It was an investment in a person's future. He never heard from Talia or Roberta again. He heard through the grapevine that Talia had moved to Atlanta trying to reinvent herself. He felt no anger, no bitterness. He felt nothing at all. They were ghosts from a life that no longer belonged to him. His weekends were for the mountains. On a clear Saturday, you could find him on a trail off the Blue Ridge Parkway, his well-worn hiking boots on his feet, a small pack on his back. He'd hike for hours, the scent of pine and damp earth filling his lungs, the vast, silent beauty of the ancient hills calming his soul. He'd find a rocky outcrop with a view and just sit, watching the sunset paint the sky in fiery strokes of orange and pink. The world was immense and full of a quiet, enduring beauty. He had been through a fire and had emerged not scarred, but forged. He had learned that the strongest structures are not built of glass and steel, but of integrity and purpose. True wealth isn't what you can take or what you can own. It's what you can build, what you can give away, and the peace you find when you are finally, truly home in your own skin. What do you believe is the foundation of a truly wealthy life? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. We believe stories like Ace's show that character is the only currency that truly matters. For more stories of resilience and justice, please subscribe to Love Beyond Pride.